Hello, everyone. My name is Elena Pineda with Forge Breast Cancer Survivor Center. So thankful to have y'all here today for our December coffee conversation. I am very pleased to say that we have Alex Lamb here to talk with us today. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist over at our friends Oasis Counseling for Women and Children. So she's here virtually. Thank you again for taking the time, but to talk about managing anxiety after a breast cancer diagnosis. So with that said, I'd like to kick us off, Alex, with just asking you to tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm honored to be here. My name is Alex. Like you mentioned, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I got my undergrad degree at the University of Alabama and my master's at Lipscomb University in Nashville. I currently work at Oasis Counseling for Women and Children. I've been here a little over 4 years. I work primarily with children, women, and couples. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, currently live in Birmingham, Alabama with my husband and my precious fur baby named Finn.
Oh, wonderful. Well, and I'm sure over 4 years at Oasis, you've seen quite a lot of different things
Yeah.
from a counseling perspective. So tell us kind of broadly, what is anxiety?
Yeah, absolutely. So, anxiety is an emotion that involves feeling tense, afraid, or fearful of future events. When you experience anxiety, you might be experiencing some worry, some nervousness, you might be more on edge. And along with that, you also can experience physical symptoms, and that could include changes in breath. You might have an increased heart rate. You might be feeling more tense, having a harder time focusing, or even having a hard time sleeping at night. So it can show up in physical ways as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know that when I'm feeling anxious, I really feel it in my shoulders or even that like feeling in the pit of your stomach a little
Yeah,
bit. Um,
absolutely.
so, so along those lines, kind of related to a breast cancer diagnosis, like are there specific or other ways that, some kind of illness, how anxiety might manifest in the body or in someone's emotions?
Yeah, I think whether it is a breast cancer diagnosis or whatever the stressor is, it can show up the same, kind of like what I was saying, those physical aspects, like you mentioned the belly, you might be even experience nausea, vomiting, body aches and pain. So it's pretty consistent in how it can show up physically, no matter the stressor.
So is it kind of common to confuse anxiety with other kinds of emotions or triggers? I know that, you may be experiencing a diagnosis or side effect of treatment that might end
Right.
up kind of similar to the emotional pains that you might have from something like anxiety. So, is there a way
Yeah.
to confuse those or differentiate them?
Yeah, exactly. I think that, yes, there can be a lot of overlap. Like you mentioned, side effects to treatment can look like those physical symptoms. And, even beyond anxiety, like when you get a diagnosis, you, there are a lot of emotions that are coming up for you beyond anxiety, like sadness or grief or stress. And I think a lot of those emotions can have overlapping symptoms, and it can be kind of hard to parse through like what is it I'm feeling, which is why meeting with a mental health professional can be really helpful, to help you figure that out. And just to normalize too, with a cancer diagnosis, you're going to have moments of anxiety, right? And yeah, just kind of realizing the difference between, oh, this is a moment I'm feeling anxious, or this anxiety has begun to be all consuming.
So let me ask you, I know that one of your big recommendations that you just said is how beneficial it can be to get in front of speaking with a therapist or a counselor to help you really process those emotions. But sometimes that can take some time, right? I know that there aren't enough counselors around, or maybe you have to go through the steps. Like, if you want to go through Forge, you definitely need to talk with one of our team members here and kind of go through the process to be able to get in for counseling. So is there first step, like something that would be really good when you're starting to notice these different things? Like, what
Yes.
might you do to help address it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you said, starting to notice, because I think, you know, we all can just be so busy and, you know, running to the next thing, or with the cancer diagnosis, you know, you can be in survival mode, just running to doctor's appointment or to your treatment. But I think that is a really good first step, is to really just slow down, and start to notice, okay, what is it I'm feeling? Like, what's coming up for me? What are these physical sensations? What am I thinking about? So really starting to recognize what is going on, you know, internally for you, and naming it, you know, even if we aren't fully sure, saying, you know what, I think this might be anxiety. I think that there could be a lot of power in just slowing down and taking the time to name it and recognize it and get curious about it.
Is this a place where having like a notebook nearby, or,
Yeah.
not everyone's a big journaler, but is
Yeah,
this maybe, in noticing that,
absolutely.
taking some notes, or post-it notes or something, like, are there kind of
Yes.
tools that you might recognize some or recommend that someone have kind of at their disposal for this acknowledgement of what's going
Yes,
on?
absolutely. Yes, notebook. I know a lot of phones now have a note app. So just throughout the day, checking in and asking yourself that question, like, what is it I'm feeling? What is it I'm thinking? To just yeah, bring more self-awareness to your experience can be really helpful.
This is an off-script question, but it's just one that came to mind for me. But
Yeah.
I know that sometimes it's really hard to distinguish between, like, maybe having an anxiety attack versus maybe having a very physical, whether it's heart attack or something like that. So
Mhm.
like, do you have any thoughts on how kind of to differentiate maybe the emotional side versus a really physical kind of thing that might be happening?
Yeah, I think definitely taking into account, um, like where you're at. Like, I know obviously with the cancer diagnosis, you know, it likely would be more emotional, right? So kind of exploring your environment, you know, what are some stressors you've been through, to kind of filter through, okay, where is this coming from? And yeah, panic attacks can, you know, be really difficult and can feel a lot like a heart attack. And that's where I think there's a lot of mindfulness tools that can be really helpful in those moments where, again, probably would you can, when you work with a mental health professional, they'll give you those tools too. But just really working on your breath work, and to kind of to help regulate and calm down that nervous system in those moments when we're experiencing panic or our heart is starting to beat really fast.
Do you have a teaser for us of what kind, like, of a breathwork exercise that we might can, do at our desks
Yeah.
here today?
Well, I mean, it can be as simple. I really love, where you breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds and out of your mouth for eight. And, you know, sometimes you're like, oh, 3 deep breaths, but I think sometimes it can take even more, you know, just really slowing down with yourself and, breathing and taking as many breaths as you need until you feel yourself kind of reconnecting and regulating to yourself.
So that prolonged exhale is really
Yeah.
what brings things back down.
Yeah.
Okay. What are some other thoughts? Because I mean, perfect into the next question, which is really about, the ways that we can manage anxiety. And so, like, holistically speaking, breath work and other ideas that you have to manage things from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, the breath work that I mentioned, you know, mindfulness, which is a pretty broad term, but under that is breath work. There's also progressive muscle relaxations that you could do that involves, again, taking some deep breaths, starting from your head, moving down your body and relaxing just parts, different muscles, different parts of your body. Um, there are skills like, a DBT skill that comes to mind. It's called observing and describing, and where you just notice something in your environment and try to just focus on that object. Can be really hard. It's called a practice for a reason. And likely when you do that, your anxious thoughts will pop in, and instead of fighting them, you just want to notice them and ask them to come and go, and then redirect and focus. So there's a lot of tools like that. um, Exercise is huge, and I know sometimes that isn't always realistic depending on where you are in your recovery and journey. But even just like a really like gentle walk can be helpful. Yoga, which incorporates that body movement and deep breathing. Paying attention to nutrition and what you're eating are great tools, outside of a mental health professional. And alongside a mental health professional, they'll have their own theories and ideas that they work off of too to support you. And so there's counselors, therapists, the holistic approach you mentioned, and then of course always there's a psychiatrist as well that you could meet with, and they would be the ones to prescribe you medication as well if you need that a little extra help.
That makes sense. Yeah. So there are a lot of different tools, things that you can be doing yourself at home, but then there are a lot of different resources that you can tap
Yeah,
into when those aren't enough.
absolutely.
All right. So what's kind of along those lines, what community resources are available for someone who is experiencing this kind of anxiety during a breast cancer diagnosis?
Yeah. So obviously a resource like Forge is huge, where, they can set you up with support groups. There are many support groups in the community, looking into your local like counseling agencies as well to find a counselor. But even beyond that, like I know in the Birmingham community, we have like the Birmingham Botanical Gardens, right? Or the Birmingham Museum of Art, like looking for resources like that, that on your own, even just going to a garden, right? And kind of that tool we talked about earlier, the observing and describing, like that on your own can be really therapeutic, and to kind of get out of your own environment and atmosphere. But places like that also do, have groups and activities and, opportunities to maybe plant together, or, little activities like that. And same with the Birmingham Museum of Art. Again, a museum can be really therapeutic to walk through and practice those mindfulness exercises, along with group, art activities, just finding those outlets to process all that we are experiencing and walking through. And, I think sometimes when we are walking through something stressful, we can forget the interests we had, before this diagnosis or this stressor. And so really making that time to reconnect with ourselves and take care of ourselves in that way.
It's a really good reminder too, Alex, because I do think that maybe some might think, oh, I'm dealing with anxiety, so it's got to be this whole new set of tools that I
Yeah.
have to have and I have to practice. But it can just be doing the things that you love, or doing something that doesn't seem like it's quote unquote, treating anxiety, but it's just fun. And in doing that, you're helping to kind of calm your nerves, address kind of how you're feeling, and have hopefully a good time doing it.
Yes, absolutely.
Let me ask, I know that at least maybe it was during COVID, maybe this has always been a problem, but sometimes it can be tough finding a counselor. There might be
Mhm.
like a long wait list in order to be able to see someone. Is that something that you're seeing now, or do you feel like, largely if that's a resource that you want to be able to tap into, you should be able to find someone who you can talk with?
Yeah, I think they're probably, the wait list has shortened. I feel like right around COVID, it was like at its height. But it can be a process, like you said. So it's good to, to have that knowledge and have some tools that you can go ahead and be implementing while waiting. But I do know that there are a lot of great counselors and agencies in our community, and that it seems like their wait list are not as long as they have been. So there's hope there.
That's really good to hear.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel like I've also heard a little bit of kind of going around and dating your therapist, like to find a good fit, right? Do you have any
Mhm.
thoughts for, that it's not always, you've gotten into talk with someone and it's the perfect fit and you're going to get everything you need. So there is the space, is that right? To kind of find
Absolutely.
someone.
Yes, you are not stuck, with one. I think it's good to give them a chance. Sometimes you have that first meeting and maybe it feels a little uncomfortable, but to give it a few sessions. But absolutely, I think it's important that you find a therapist that you really connect with and feel comfortable with, because obviously it's your time, and it's really important that you get what you need from that time.
Now, an insurance question, and I know that everyone's insurance is different and what they cover and how much and all of that. I mean, completely
Mhm.
differs by plan, by where you are, kind of everything. Is it typical though for, accessing a counselor and going to mental health counseling for that to go through your health insurance, or is that typically an out-of-pocket expense?
So it depends. Like our agency, Oasis, like we do take insurance. We also have a scaling fee based on income. I do know, there's some, if you find a counselor in like a private practice, sometimes it can be out of pocket. But I do feel like majority of therapists, want to, utilize your insurance if possible. But I think it depends what avenue you're going through. Yeah.
Always ask the insurance question first, though. You gotta
Yes.
you gotta call that
Yes.
phone number on the back of the card.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. I know that I'm just coming up with questions as we're going,
No.
but I'm really enjoying our conversation. Um, do you have any thoughts on what, like, if someone is experiencing anxiety from a diagnosis, from life in general, like
Mhm.
any thoughts on first thing when you wake up in the morning? Here are some
Yeah.
tips of things that you could do to really help set the tone for your day.
Yes. I think it's different for everyone. And, I think that's important to keep in mind. It can be kind of trial and error to figure out what works best for you. But I do think, we talk a lot about mindfulness, and part of mindfulness is being really present with, what you are doing. And I think sometimes, we could wake up in the morning and already be rushing and, brushing our teeth and cooking breakfast, and so really making, like, having margin, like, in your time to slow down, and to, mindfully, like, if you're brushing your teeth, you're brushing your teeth, right? Or if you're eating breakfast, you're eating breakfast. Like, what you're doing, you're really present in trying to do. I also think, incorporating a mindfulness exercise. I know that there's some apps like, that you can utilize, or even on YouTube, if you just look up like 5-minute mindfulness exercise guided meditation. Those can be really good to incorporate in your morning routine as well, just to kind of slow down and, slow down and work on that self-awareness and how you are feeling starting your day.
That makes a lot of sense because I feel there are many days where you get out of bed and then here's your punch list of things that need to
Yes.
happen. So you're already thinking about everything
Yeah.
for your entire day instead of just like, here's the next, and
Yes.
sequencing it that way.
Yeah. One step at a time.
Yeah. What about evenings? I imagine it might be kind of a similar
Yeah.
thing, but like in the wind down and in trying to
Yes.
manage some anxious thoughts in the evening.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you mentioned the journal earlier, a journal can be a really good tool at night. Like if you're falling asleep, having a hard time shutting off those thoughts, sometimes like really getting up and writing, okay, here are all these anxious thoughts I'm having, to just get them out of our mind, put them on paper, and like, okay, I'm closing this and putting it away. Um, and yeah, making having that time to wind down. Sometimes, like I said, we're really busy and we're overstimulated and we're trying to hop into bed. But to really have some downtime before falling asleep can help our brain shut off a little bit easier.
And it sounds like that's a beneficial practice for anyone at any point in time. Like you may be experiencing some heightened anxiety because of a breast cancer diagnosis or during treatment. So perhaps these are going to be really good tools, for your beginning of your day, end of your day. But even once that season of life has passed, it sounds like those could be helpful tools to kind of continue doing.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Because, like you said, they're stressors, just throughout life. So, really good tools to just incorporate into your daily routine and kind of sets us up for success when those difficult times come as well.
Mm-hmm. You can kind of be more even keel instead of, a
Yeah.
lot of up and down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, Alex, final question is just like, are there any final thoughts that you'd like to leave everyone with today?
Yeah, I'm just honored to have been here and to share with you guys. And breast cancer is really close to my heart. So it was a really neat way to kind of wrap up my year sharing with y'all. So I appreciate y'all having me.